Buddy, my name is Dave Clark. I just wanted to kind of check, make sure everything's kind of working here. Just kind of let me know if you can hear me, and we'll try to make corrections. Excellent. I see people putting it in the chat. Thank you very much. We'll get started here in a few minutes. We'll give a chance for some others to get signed on. Looks like we still have a few people signing in, so we'll give this a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, good morning, everybody. I haven't seen anybody sign on in the last couple minutes, so we'll go ahead and get this show started. Just to make sure you're in the right workshop today. This is for specs, plans, and site visits. Just to keep in mind, this is kind of basically more for newbie orientation workshop series, but it will help others, I'm sure. Today will be probably a little over an hour with this presentation. And we'll have a chance for questions and answers at the end for you to either put them into the chat, or we'll just maybe unmute and do it that way. A lot of times that's easier. Notice in the screen there's standard specifications for road and bridge construction. That's the spec book. This is the one that was adopted in 2016. I used that one just because it kind of blended well with the colors I had for the scheme there. But there is a new one that is out. It was adopted January 1, 2020, and it is an orange colored book. And we'll be talking about that and showing you where you can find that throughout today's presentation. We'll be talking about the specs, kind of how they're set up, some of the numbering systems that are used, and that type of thing with specifications. We'll take a look at plans and just kind of go over the general layout of plans, what you're looking for, what things might be important when you're looking at a set of plans. It says, are you sharing a screen? Well, I thought I was. Let me double check that. And can anybody see the screen?
Nope, we can't see it yet, Dave.
This again. How about now?
Yep, you're good.
All right. Excellent. This stuff all works well when it works well. Okay. Anyhow, I'll just kind of hit that again. Make sure you're in the right spot. Specs, plans, and site visit workshop, kind of DBE orientation series that we're doing here now. There'll be a lot more workshops throughout the year, remaining this year and into next year till probably April. So we'll talk about that also a little bit. I did mention the spec book is a little bit different. You can see the blue one here, but the new one now is an orange colored one. And you just want to be sure you have the right spec book for your project. If you have a project that's multi-years and it was let back in 2021, then you may be operating under the blue spec book rather than the orange one. Okay. As mentioned, this is kind of a newbie DBE orientation workshop, part of that series that we're doing here in October. And I'm not going to go into tremendous lot of detail on some of this. There will be follow-up workshops throughout the year that will go into a lot more detail. But the idea here is to kind of give you a taste of where to find some of these things, some of the things that are important to you in terms of the specifications, the plans, and doing a site visit. Down in the lower right-hand corner here, you'll see there's a link to Eventbrite, and that is where you go for all the workshops. I'm going to go to my next screen. Click on that, bring up that site where that is at on Eventbrite. This is what you're going to see when that comes up. Down below, as you scroll down, it'll list the workshops that are already out there and ready for you to sign up for. As you can see, here's the one that we're doing today, this morning. There's one for access to capital. It'll be done this afternoon at 1:30. And then next Wednesday, we'll have another one. We'll get a little more detail into the standard specifications, some of the forms and documents that you'll be using. And then at the end of the month, the last of the new DBE orientation workshops, we'll talk about mobilization, material allowance, extra work, and traffic control. As you scroll down, you'll see there are a lot more workshops already out there that are up that you can start to sign up for. I encourage you to sign up for these. I mean, they're free. I mean, other than your time spend on these, there's no charge for you to that. And then just keep tabs on this. Make this a maybe you want to pin this site on your web browser so that you can go and check it from time to time. Because as I mentioned, this only goes right now, I think through December 1st is what we got out there. There'll be more in December, January, all the way in through March and April. So keep an eye on those because the ones coming up later on in the year will get more and more advanced in terms of the content. As you can see there, navigating the website. I think maybe you already had one earlier on that for the new DVEs, but November 15th, there's one that's got basics. And then on the 17th, there'll be one that has a little bit more advanced information. So just keep an eye on this. Sign up for these. They're free. I think you'll find there's a lot of good information there. Too fast. Okay, just kind of like our agenda for the today's workshop. We're going to talk about where you can find specs and plans when you need them. We're going to talk a little bit about what's might be different if you're a contractor or a consultant, and the different forms, different manuals, all kinds of things that you may use. And then we'll end up with this, why do a site visit? Why is that important? Part of the specifications, first part, contractor, consultants, and we'll go into this a little bit more detail here, but I just want to hit some of the things. We'll talk about where you find your manuals and guides, the standard specifications, recurring specifications, project procedures guide, construction manual, inspector's checklist, that type of thing. And these can all apply to contractors and consultants that do phase 3 construction inspection for IDOT. We'll use a lot of the same manuals and guides as the contractors might be interested in. Consultants, Bureau Design and Environment Manual, Drainage Manual, Bridge Manuals, Local Roads Manual. I mean, there's just tons of them, and I'll show you the location for these, and you'll see how many there are. But the most current of all of these can be found on the website. I would encourage it. That's where you go. Even the spec book, we talked about that. There's one for 2016. So if you're working on a project that started in 2018, you're operating under that blue spec book. If you are on a job that started this summer, then you're operating on the orange spec book. And we'll go to where those can be found. I do encourage people to purchase the standard specifications spec book. There's not many things out there today that you can purchase like that, but that is one that I would encourage you to buy. I think, if I'm not mistaken, $40 a piece. And then each year you get an update of the standard, or not the standard specification, but the supplemental specifications and recurring special provisions. So those will be sent to you automatically if you order one of these. And we'll go to that site here in a minute too. Under plans and stuff, we'll just kind of cover where those can be found on the website. We'll talk about the general order of things and a set of plans, different kinds of sheets, what to look at. We'll look at a few of them just to give you an idea of what they look like and what might be important there. And then, as I mentioned, why a site visit is important. We'll do that at the very end. I did put a link here, and we'll just go to that right now about the inspector's checklist. I find this to be a very nice thing to have and use because, bring this over, all right. That link takes you to this page. You have your construction manual, how to document contact quantities. That's more for consultants and so forth. Your highway standards are here. That can be contractors or consultants. You have the manual for that. Local roads, that's more for consultants also. Traffic control devices, that could be both. Project procedures guide, that's both there. And then project procedures guide is more about materials, what inspection is required for those, when they have to do sampling, when testing has to be done. So that's something that both a contractor and a consultant would be using. But I just wanted to kind of hit this inspector's checklist quickly. There's not inspector checklists for like every item. that IDOT does. But in general, here are the ones that are available. And the reason I think it's important, especially for contractors and even consultants that are doing phase 3 inspection, it gives you an idea of what that inspector is looking for, what the state feels some of the important things are that they need to be looking for. So if I just open up one, I'll just do pavement patching here. And let me get to the top. So this is kind of what it looks like. Some of the things that it's going to cover, kind of similar to what's in the spec book itself, the standard specifications. It's going to talk about traffic control and what needs to be done there. I'm going to scroll through this pretty quickly. It talks about how they're going to paint out the patch limits. It'll talk about the different sizes of patches that are out there. I mean, when you bid patching, you're bidding type 1, 2, 3, or 4 type patches, and it all depends on the size of the patch, whether it's a type 1, 2, 3, or 4. But just to be aware, these are the kind of things they're going to be doing, laying these out. They're going to be keeping track of these, measuring these. You should be measuring patches at the same time and coordinating with whoever that inspector is to make sure you agree with the quantities. It's going to talk about the plants, where you're getting your materials from. It's a concrete or a hot mix asphalt plant. It's going to get into the different kinds of patches, Class A, Class B, what things are important to them. I just pick out a couple things here, breaking, removal, how it can be removed, what you got to do, where you got to saw cut it, prohibiting the extensions of saw cuts. It's just a lot of different information. So I think it's good for you, your superintendent that's on the site, just to go through this, look at this, make sure that they understand what IDOT feels is really important, what they're going to be watching for, and make sure you follow it closely. That way, you get paid in full for everything that you do, and you don't do something that causes you to have to do extra work where you have to remove something that you hadn't planned to do. All right. The other thing, need to go past that. The other thing I wanted to kind of talk about is that standard specifications. And I got a link here at the bottom. Drag that back over. When you use this link, this will take you to the page where manual sales are done. Basically, about the only thing you can really get today is the standard specifications for road and bridge construction. And you can kind of see a picture there. It's an orange book. You have a spec book, and then you have what is called the supplemental and recurring specifications and special provisions. That comes with it. Every year, you'll get a new one of those. And every year, it'll get a little thicker because there's things that change. And that'll be your supplemental that you'll have that you can use to see if there's any changes that affect any of the kinds of pay item, work items that you're doing. As I mentioned, I believe this is $40, if I'm not mistaken. There is a way here to purchase that, and you just click on the thing and go in and purchase it, and they'll send those to you. You'll see there's a note that orders sometimes have been taking a little bit longer, so the sooner you get it done, the better. Now is a good time to get it ordered, and that way it's ready for next construction season. All right. So that's kind of our agenda for today. Okay. IDOT specifications. We talked about there's all kinds of guides, manuals, and things of that sort that are out there. The link that I have here, I click on that, will take you to the IDOT homepage. The IDOT homepage, it looks similar to this. As you scroll down here in the lower right-hand corner is resources. And here's where you can find manuals, standards, a lot of things like that. When I click on that, you'll see there's archive files here. There's different forms here. And we'll get into the forms next week a little bit more. Manuals and guides, your standards, proposed rules, probably not used too much by anybody on contractor consultant side, but that is also there. But if we click on the manuals and guides, And I'm not going to hit on each and every one of these, because I'm just going to scroll through. You'll see there is a ton of different guides and manuals that are out there. But here's where you would go to find the most current version of any manual or guide that you may use or need. As I scroll on down here, the standard specifications books are a little bit farther down here. Let me get to it. Okay, so here, right in this area, I highlight over one. You can see there's one for 2020, and you've got stuff for airports here. There's 2012, 2016. There's supplemental and recurring special revisions. Those are listed down here. Survey work as a consultant. There's a manual for the surveying that you may need to use. Like I said, there's a manual for almost everything that you can think of. Hit on just a couple of those as I scroll back up. Let's see. Mentor Protege program. If anybody's interested in that, there's guidelines for that here, how you implement it, and so on and so forth. So if any DBEs are interested in getting into a mentor protege arrangement with a prime contractor, here's some of the information you're going to want to read on. Materials inspection, there's a manual for that. That's probably used more by IDOT than anybody, but still as a consultant, it may come in handy. Your local roads, streets, special provisions, those are all listed here. As you can see, there's a lot of those. The local roads and street manual is here, mainly probably used mostly by consultants. What else we got? Guide bridge special revisions. If you're a bridge builder or into building bridges, these would be very important for you to use. Consultants will be putting these into plans that they put together, and contractors need to be aware of what those requirements are. If you're doing geotechnical work, there's a manual for geotechnical. Culvert manuals, there's bridge manuals. Here's the construction manual. That's another thing that I think both consultants and contractors should be aware of. Might be something that you can use from time to time. But anytime you have a question on any of these kinds of things, here's where you're going to go to find the most current version out there. So I just caution you to be sure that you don't use some old one and you get the most current information possible. And it's the same thing with the forms and standards. You're going to go to the site here. I'll just back it up. You go to the site here for forms, go to the site here for standards. I'll click on the forms ones. It's an alphabetical thing. And so say you're wanting construction. You would come in here, you'd go down to construction, and then here's a list of all the construction forms that you may need or use. And we'll get into this in a lot more detail next week. But here's where you'd find that kind of information in the work that you're doing, any kind of work that you're doing with IDOT or local agencies such as counties or municipalities that are working with IDOT funding. Okay. So go to this again, and what I want to do is I want to move on to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit now about the actual spec book, and this is pages taken out of the spec book. Section 100 is kind of the general requirements that you may need. Have insurance there, other inspection kinds of things, requirements for bonding and stuff like that that you can get there. But one of the things I wanted to point out is Section 10504 or 05, I'm sorry, which is the coordination of contract documents. And the reason that's important is certain documents supersede others. So this kind of gives you that hierarchy down here in this table as to what those are. For example, supplemental specifications hold over the standard spec book. That orange book, anything that's in that supplemental will hold over that. Recurring special revisions, they're going to hold over not only the standard specifications, but also the supplemental. So just be aware if something ever changes there, make sure you have the most current version of what supersedes what. In terms of plans, recurring special revisions, supplementals, and standard specifications hold over what's in the plans. And then you'll notice here, there's a couple other little notes here. Details in plans hold over the highway standards. Calculated dimensions hold over scale dimensions. So you could be scaling off a set of plans, but what you're actually going to get paid for is what is actually measured in the field. So just make sure you understand that. Highway standards are indicated by revision numbers listed in the index of highway standards, and I'll show you where you can find those when we get on into the plans section of this presentation. Special revisions, that's another thing that you need to be very aware of, and I'll show you where you find those. But they hold over your plans, your recurring, your supplemental, your standard. Those are things that are special to every set of plans, and each set of plans can be a little bit different. Each project may have something that's very special to it, and they write a special provision to cover that. So just keep in mind here's what that hierarchy of contract documents are, and be aware of that when you're out in the field, and know that you're working under the right set of provisions. Okay. Now, the next thing I wanted to try to cover here a little bit, this I just took out a set of plans. You'll notice this is basically the summary of quantities on one page out of a set of plans. To the left is the code number. In the center is a description of the item, what that item is. You have the units, how it's being paid for, whether it's a foot, square yard, ton, each, cubic yard, whatever it might be. And then it shows what the total quantity is. Now, you'll also notice there's a thing over here. This happens to be an interstate project, and so it's a 90-10% split, federal and state funding. That really doesn't mean a lot to contractors, but it helps the department determine who's paying for what and how much that percentage is. You may find that there's additional columns like this on other sets of plans. Maybe it goes through a municipality, and that municipality is participating in some of the work, and so they have a share of the cost. May also be a county or some other agency that is sharing in some of the costs, and that's how that's broken down. But the main thing I wanted to point out, you'll notice these code numbers. They are 8-digit numbers, and they're specific to a specific pay item. And just like, for example, here, we'll just pick on this aggregate shoulders type B. And it's an 8-digit number. The first 3 digits, 481, will refer you to which specification in the spec book, what section in the spec book you need to go to find out information on that. It's the same way with standards. A lot of standards, if there's a standard for aggregate shoulders, you'll be looking for the standard that starts with a 481. If it's, something to do with drainage, it's probably a 602 or something like that number. So it just depends on what the pay item number is. That helps you find like what section in the spec book to go to, what standards might be appropriate for that particular pay item. So I picked on that 481 and aggregate shoulder. So when you actually then go to the spec book and you go to section 481, what you're going to find then is that aggregate shoulders. And that's why I'm saying it's kind of a connection. It makes it easy for you to find any specification that may be needed. And it's going to be the same thing in your special revisions. They'll refer to different sections within the spec book for that. Okay. Since I picked on that one, I want to bring that one up and just want to kind of cover a little bit. 481. I passed it. So mainly when you go into the spec book, most specifications, most sections for each pay item are kind of set up with the same kind of information in the same order. There might be some, changes, variations to this depending on the pay item and the type of pay item, how it's being paid, so on and so forth. But basically, they're all kind of set up the same. And I just kind of wanted to go over that with you so you understand that. Under like that aggregate shoulders, the first thing is a description. And it's going to talk to you, give you a description. Some are going to be just a one line, some may be a whole paragraph of information about what that description of that particular pay item is. The next portion would be, in this case, like materials and what materials are appropriate for that particular pay item and how those are to be used. And you'll see here, for example, for these aggregate shoulders, coarse aggregate is also then going to refer you to another section in the spec book, and the 1000 sections toward the back. And there you're going to find out more information about where you can get those coarse aggregates, what the gradations are, any specific requirements for those. But it basically tells you what kind of material here that can be used for that particular pay item. If you were doing pipe culverts, you may find that there's, a half a dozen or more different types of materials that can be used for that particular pay item. The next portion that you're going to see is equipment. And under equipment here, they're basically telling you here's the kind of equipment that they expect that you're going to need to have to do that. Now, do you need all this? Not necessarily. Maybe it depends on what kind of work it is. If it's a small area, a large area, do you need, a spreader or, that spreading the aggregate shoulders for miles down the road? Or is it just small areas that maybe you can just dump and spread by hand? But it gives you some idea of the equipment you're going to have. And then it also, again, as I mentioned, going to send you to the back of the spec book where there's additional information about those particular pieces of equipment. Next big sections that's going to be covered is construction requirements. And here again, you'll find these will vary depending on the pay item and the kind of work that's being done. Here it's going to talk about, in this case, subgrade preparation. Since there's aggregate, how much moisture is in the aggregate? Is there a moisture correction that's going to be required because it comes out too wet and that makes it heavier? We're going to talk about the thicknesses, whether it's type A, type B, type of shoulders in this case. But then as we go on down here at the very end of every spec, there's going to probably be something about opening things to traffic. For example, if it's a concrete patch or something, what is the requirements before you can open that to traffic? In this case, it's going to refer to this particular article of when that can be open to traffic. It also talks about method of measurement here. So, different pay items can have different ways they're going to measure it. And, it could be tons, could be cubic yards, square yards, lineal feet, whatever it might be. So here it gives you an idea of how you're going to be paid for this in terms of the units that are going to be used. And then the very last thing is always the basis of payment. And you can see here where they specifically list aggregate shoulders type E or B. Those contract units priced per ton are aggregate shoulders wedge shoulder type B. That's at a contract unit price per square yard. So they'll break this down depending on the actual description of the pay item of how that's going to be paid. And those are things that you need to be well aware of and keep track of when you're out into the field. All right. On here. Okay, we'll get into the plans here now. And what I want to do is first show you where you can find a set of plans. And when I click on this, I get back here. Hang on. So this is going to take us right back to the home page. And where you're going to find plans and specifications for a particular contract on a particular letting is by going to doing business. And then under doing business, you have the drop down for procurements. When you click on procurements, you're going to get this page. consultants, you're probably going to use the engineering and architectural professionals tab here. There's different links for that to use there. There is a construction services link here. You click there, it takes you to a lot of different shortcuts to different things that might be needed. But to find plans and specs, you want to go to the construction letting and bidding. So I'm going to click here. It's going to take me to this page. Now, currently, there's not a letting that's out there. There'll be one coming out soon, but you can see there's different things here about how you do electronic bidding, authorized to bid, so on and so forth. And we'll go through this later on in a workshop this winter. But you can see over here, here's the archives of past ones. I'm just going to pick the one here for September 23rd, which was the last one. When you click on that, this is where it takes you. Here again, now you've got a lot of information up here about bidding, what's important dates, bid tabs, authorized bidders, non-bidders, and we'll look at a little bit of that here as we go through this. I'll just show you a little bit how this works. Again, we'll go into more detail, but you'll see that there's just a lot of projects. And let's say you want to maybe only work on certain kinds of things. There's a way to search here. You can search all, or say I'm not going to do any work for aeronautics or DNR. I want to work just on the highways. Region, we'll just pick region 4. And then we'll say we're only going to work in region or district 6 in region 4. And let's say we're going to be working on bridges. So we want to know what bridge projects are out there. So I'm going to click on bridges and then I'm going to do a search. So now you see it really narrows it down. I want to work in District 6. I'm going to work on bridges. There is one contract on that letting in September that was bridge related. And it tells you a little bit about what county it's in. Gives you a quick little description of that project, what's going to be involved with that. Now you want to say you want to get the plans for that. You click on this, takes you to this page. And up here in the left-hand corner, that's where you find your plans and special provisions. So I'm going to click on that. And you may find on some projects that there's a lot more things to choose from. In this case, you got your plans, and here is what they call their special provisions. There may be something, maybe there's a project labor agreement, those might be there. There might be addendums on those projects, those will be listed there. Large projects, I know, for example, there's an interchange at I-74 and I-57 near Champaign, several hundred pages project. So what they'll do is they'll list those per 100 pages. So there might be one from 1 to 100, first 100 sheets, and then 101 to 200 and 201 to 300 and so forth. So it just, because of the size of it, that's how they break those down. But if I go to the plans, then you'll get something like this. And here's where it might have it broken down into the different numbers of sheets. This one here is a smaller set. Takes a couple seconds for it to load, but this is what's going to come up. And it's going to tell you, when that letting was and what item it is. So there's where you'd find your plans. Now, if I go back, just click on these special provisions. Takes a few seconds for it to load also, but that's what's going to come up and that's what it's going to look like for you. You can download these things, save them as a PDF and look at it that way. But go into this a little bit, but you can see there's things here about the recurring special provisions, and they put a little X here as to which ones apply to this project. You'll get into your index of sheet for special revisions. And let's just say you're going to do riprap, for example. So that's on page 9. If I go down to page 9 here, This is something that is changed from what the standard specifications states. So you may have read the standard specifications for riprap class 4A, but now you got a special revision. You need to make sure you've read this and you understand what might have changed from the standard specs to make sure that you're not missing something that may increase the cost, for example, for the material or how you have to place that material. So very important to read your special provisions. So that is where you're going to find that. And if I go back here, I just wanted to touch on this page quickly a little bit more too. Up here in this corner, it talked about the letting, when the letting is. The first 3 digits here, that's the item number on the letting. The last 5 digits is the contract number. That's another important number to keep in mind. Most everything that IDOT does tracks, it'll track by that contract number. So if you're ordering materials, make sure that they're putting the contract number on your invoice. You know, if you're just anything that you're documenting, put the contract number on there. Be very aware what that contract number is. In this case, there obviously must be a pay item report here that'll kind of tell what some of the costs were, the pay items out there. As projects get awarded, they start putting out more and more information on each pay project. This tells you what region it was in, what district, what the percent DBE participation requirement was. There's no veteran requirement on this project, but then it just kind of gives a lot more information about the location of the project, what section it is, contract, the state job number, so on and so forth. You'll also know down here whether it's a working day contract or whether it may be a completion date. That'll be listed here. As you scroll on down here, as I mentioned, authorized bidders earlier, this kind of shows there were 2 authorized bidders. You have to put in a request to be an authorized bidder, and you have to be approved before you can get listed if you're actually bidding as a prime, which you'd have to be pre-qualified in the right categories to be a prime. But in this case, you can see county contractors was the low bidder. This was basically what their low bid was. There was one other bidder. It was Brandt Construction. And then there were non-bidders, Phoenix Corporation. They may have just been wanting to look at plans because they wanted to bid those. You'll also see that, you know, it has a list of all the pay items. Here's that 8-digit pay item number. This is the units, it's how it's being paid, a description of that pay item. And then over here to the right, it shows what the planned quantities are for that particular project. And here again, planned quantities, that's just exactly what they are. They're planned. It may not be what the final quantities are. Final quantities could be a little less, could be a little more. If it's more, IDOT has to do an authorization to pay for anything over what the planned quantity is. So if you're having major increases on a pay item that you're doing, be sure you work with that RE on the project and they get an authorization in to increase those quantities. Otherwise, your payment's going to be delayed and that could take quite a while. So make sure you stay on top of that type of thing. Okay, I think that's enough on this page here. If I go back here and again, just as you can see, they list these by the item number, the first 3 digits, the item number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so on and so forth. And then the last 5 is a contract number. Depending on what district it is, those will change. You have a little bit of an idea of what kind of a project this is. But don't forget, if you want to, you know, break down this a little bit and search for specific types of things, there are different things that you can search for. I'll just show you one more thing too while we're here. These all back to R. When you go over here under your categories, there is one down here or at the bottom. It's called Small Business Initiative. So I'm going to do a search on that. The reason I want to show you that, there was none that last letting. Okay, let me find one where it does show one. We'll go back. Let's go back to August. Small business search. Okay, so there was one on this the previous one, August letting. It was in Cook County and it was cracked ceiling joint. Reason I want to bring that up, with this, you do not have to have a bid bond and you do not have to be pre-qualified to bid on these projects. If it's not a small business initiative project, because these are only for small businesses. So, you know, it's a DBE or another, any kind of a small business, if you qualify as a small business, you can bid on these and you don't have to be pre-qualified in the major categories for that work. If you want to do bridges, you're going to have to be pre-qualified in bridges. Or if you're going to do concrete paving, you're going to have to be pre-qualified in that. Patching, you got to be pre-qualified in that. So that's just another step. If you're a DBE, you're certified as a DBE, you're certified to do certain kinds of work, but that does not pre-qualify you to do work as a prime contractor on a project. Okay, move that out. And so now you found, you know now where to find your plans when you're looking for different plans. My next sheet here, I want to just kind of cover the way plans are set up a little bit. For the most part, you know, like I said, you'll find these on your website. The general order of things in a set of plans is kind of how I've listed it here. This is kind of general: cover sheet, index of sheets, general notes, quantities, typical sections, so on and so forth. I won't read each and every one of these, but this is kind of the general format that IDOT uses to put together a set of plans. Now, does that mean you won't see variations of this? No, you will see variations. There's even what they call like a small set of plans, which will be on an 8.5 by 11 set rather than 11 by 17. So those will be set up basically the same way, but it's just a smaller set. So you'll see those kinds of variations out there. We'll just go, one other thing, like on the cover sheet, sometimes they'll put the index of sheets, highway standards on the cover sheets. It just depends a lot on the kind of project it is, the size of the project, you know, how many sheets there are. It may need its own special sheet within the plan. So you look at, going to my next slide here, if we look at a cover sheet, we'll point out some of the things here that's important, but you'll notice here, they say for the index of sheets, see sheet 2. Here again, if it's a real small set of plans, small project, it may list that the sheets right here on the cover sheet along with the standards. The one other thing that's very important, as we talked about a little while ago, down here in the lower left-hand corner, they're going to list the contract number. Okay. Contract number is also listed up here in the upper right-hand corner, and that'll show up on every page. So just keep in mind that's where your contract number is. You've got some things here that kind of gives you the location of where the project here. You have the map here of Illinois on the right. So you can see this particular project is in East Central Illinois, Vermilion County. And here there's a blow up a little closer of where that is at in Vermilion County. Above that, you get a lot of information about the project. This one happens to be on I-74. I know it's a bridge project because it says BR, and they use a lot of different letters like that to describe different kinds of projects. This is a federal project number. This particular case, it's a bridge rehabilitation project of the Salt Fork Vermilion River. It's west of Danville. It's in Vermilion County. So you can get a lot of information here about the project and some of the things that are important to you. Also, it tells you up here, you know, what letting this was on. This one happened to be July 31st, 2020, and it was item number 74 on that letting. Okay, the next sheet, and this is the very same set of plans. This is where the index of sheets are found. You can see with this particular set of plans, there are a total of 161 sheets. You can see that by going down through here. You can see the different things that are listed, what page different things are on. On this one, they also put the highway standards on here. And I mentioned before, the first three numbers of a highway standard, that's going to refer to a particular pay item or section within the spec book. So I think I mentioned before, say it's I don't know what we got here, manhole steps, section 602, 701. So I know that's in section 602 of the spec book. If you go down here, here's all your traffic control a little farther down here. That's 701. I know then I need to go to section 701 in the spec book to read more about that. And if it's sign panels, 720, which I don't know why it's not showing up. There it goes. Down here, 720. So 720 is the section I would go to in the spec book. So you kind of get an idea how these things interrelate between pay items, the spec book, standards, and a lot of other things that IDOT does. All right. One of the next important things that you're going to see in a set of plans is the sheet that has general notes on it. You're going to want to read those general notes. There may be something there that may affect a pay item that you may be working on. And you want to be sure you know what that says and be well aware of it, because it may supersede something else. We talked about that hierarchy of documents. So, be sure you're well aware of any general notes that may be in here. And it may, not all the general notes may be shown here. There may be general notes shown in other places. And I think when we get a little farther back here in the set of plans, there's some other general notes on some different things. General notes, for example, might be for the bridge plans. Those are kind of put together separately and inserted in here. One other thing listed here is commitments, and in this case there was none, but that's another thing to kind of look for. If there's some commitments that are being made, they might be shown here in the plans, they might be mentioned in the special revisions, but be sure you're aware of those. Maybe there's a commitment to a certain business or landowner about access, and it may affect the work that you're doing. So just be aware of any commitments, make sure that there's nothing there that's going to affect the work that you may be doing down the road. Okay, we kind of looked at one of these earlier. I wanted to kind of go over this again. Here again, you've got your code number, 8-digit number, first 3 digits going to refer you to a section in the spec book. You got a description of what that item is. You got the units of how it's going to be measured and paid for, and you got your total quantity. Eric, I've seen these put together differently. You may see where there's 2 sets of project or code numbers on a page. So you might have this over here on this half, and then on this half have another one. Some of that I think just depends a little bit on the designer and how much room they need. If they don't have a lot of additional breakdowns in terms of how the funding is, they may try to split it up and put more onto one page. In this case, I know on this project there were several pages of pay items. This here is just the initial page in that set of plans. Okay, usually then the next section is going to be what they call their typical sections. They're going to show you what the existing cross sections look like for each kind of, and there could be several of these. And in fact, I know on this particular project, there are several pages of typical cross sections, both existing and proposed. Normally, they're going to show on one page, here's the existing, here's these the locations of those, and that corresponds with what the proposed typical is. Now, you'll see there's a little bit more stationing here, but it gives you some idea of what the typical looks like existing as it is today and what it is they want to build in the end. And here, in case this happens to be, looks like a crossover in the median, and it kind of shows they're taking out this existing shoulder that's up here and the existing. They're then going to put in a proposed under drain, goes in there. They're going to put in a paved aggregate base in their sub base. Then they're going to put in there a hot mix asphalt on top of that and an aggregate shoulder along the edge. And then, there'll be some grading here, as you can see, in the median. So you can garner a lot of information from these typical sections in terms of what is out there existing and then what needs or what's going to be proposed. The next section, what they call their schedule of quantities. You're going to find in this area where they've expanded on certain items that kind of go together. And if I look just at the one down below, the pavement schedule, there's a lot of things that can be involved in paving on a project. In this case, there was a subgranular base that went under first. And there's the bituminous prime coat and the bituminous materials coat that they put down. And then there's the hot mix asphalt binder, so on and so forth. There's the aggregate shoulders, there's the pipe under drain. All those are kind of associated with that particular kind of work. And so they've broken that out more here. They've listed what those different items are. They listed up above what those pay item numbers are. They've put on here what the units are, how it's being paid, and then they've broken it down station by station in terms of, in this case, how many pounds of prime coat is needed. Over here, how many lineal feet of under drain is needed. So you can get a breakdown a lot better where some of these things are at. Now, is this the only place you're going to find this? No. Sometimes you'll find these on the plan and profile sheets. Bridge plans may have these also broken out because they'll break out what their concrete is for their piers, what the rebars are that go into the pier. They may also show the riprap that goes underneath the bridge. So you'll find these throughout the set of plans, but usually they break out a lot of the things right after the typical sections in their schedule of quantities. Usually then the next section, they'll give you some information about the vertical and horizontal control for the project in terms of elevations and alignment. This is just one page out of that particular project. You can see up here what the vertical alignment is for one section of it. And then down below, they got their horizontal point controls. So it tells you what those point numbers are, where it's located, the elevation is. And so if, as a contractor, if you're doing staking, this will be important information. Or if you're say a consultant that is doing the staking for the project, here again, it's a lot more, it's another area where you can find information to be able to lay out the project and put it to the right line and elevation. Okay, and then the next thing you usually get into is your plan and profile types of sheets. In this particular case, they show removal items on here too. That's kind of these cross-hatched areas. In large projects, sometimes they'll break those out completely separate and show removal on their own sheets alone, because a lot of times there can be a lot going on. In this particular case, there's not a terrible lot going on. You can see what they're removing a little bit of shoulders, removing a median crossover, and then they're showing here where they're building actually this crossover. So this is all paving that they're doing in these areas. So this is the plan view. That's why they call it a plan and profile. And then down below is the profile. In that profile, it shows, the grade and the slope on the roadway here. You see there's some drainage structures on this. This one here is an existing because it's hashed out. Here's a new one that they're putting in. And so it shows a lot of that elevations and stuff there. So that's kind of what your plan and profiles are going to look like. Different kind of, the 2-lane road's going to be a lot different than what it shows here on a 4-lane interstate highway. But basically, it's the same kind of a setup. You got your elevations along the left. You got your stationing down along the bottom. And it's got all your elevations that are proposed. Now, is this exactly how it's going to end up? Probably not. As it gets out there and you're laying this out, you're going to match what the existing conditions are. I mean, you got a bridge that you're going to meet in this particular case. Well, whatever that bridge gets built at, then you got to make sure your roadway matches it. And you got to make sure that you have a safe and smooth transition. But that gives you a little bit of an idea of what a plan and profile sheet's going to look like. Traffic control, that's usually one of the next things. In this particular case, they had a real-time traffic control system. that they put out there. So there was message boards and arrow boards and all kinds of things. Some of this stuff is automated. It shows locations of the different signs. Keep in mind if you're doing traffic control and you're signing a project, you're going to want to go with the RE. They're going to probably lay it out ahead of time. They also have a traffic engineer that usually comes out and looks at these and helps lay out the signage, because you don't want to put a sign where it's behind something and people can't see what their construction sign is. So these kind of give you an idea where they're going to be located, but they may get moved, a few hundred feet one way or another to get the best fit and the best visibility. You'll also note there's notes here. So as I mentioned before, there's the general note sheet, but you're going to find notes throughout the project. Just be sure that you look throughout the plans and read all the notes. Make sure there's nothing that affects the work that you're doing. Okay, details. Details are kind of the next section of things you're going to see usually. In this particular case, I pulled up one that's just about the ramp details. You could have 4, 5, 6 different details on one sheet. Just depends on the project and what the particular detail is about. But you could have maybe 1 or 2 sheets of these. You could have a dozen sheets. Just depends a lot on the project. You can see here too, in this particular detail, they've given a lot more information about the location, the length, the width, the area. Down below, they give information about the tonnage of the bedding material, the square yards of filter fabric that you're going to have. So here you can find out a lot more information about what's going to be required in total and at each location. Bridge plans. Okay, this is just the first sheet of a set of bridge plans that gets inserted into the roadway plans. This is kind of like their plan and profile. Here's the profile up above, and here's the plan view of that particular bridge. Also has a location map and stuff like that. There'll be multiple pages for any kind of a bridge. There'll be a plan for each pier, one for each abutment. And sheets there gives them all the elevations, shows the quantity of concrete, the quantity of rebar that may be needed, or other materials, riprap, for example, that they'll put up underneath the bridge in different places here. What those quantities are will be listed on the sheets that follow. There'll be sheets about the concrete or steel beams that are being used. So there'll be a ton of information in the bridge plans, and like I say, those are usually toward the back of the plans, and they're kind of separate and usually inserted separately from the roadway plans. All right, the last sheet in a set of plans I want to talk about is your cross-section sheets. This is kind of a typical one. Some of them may be turned 90 degrees a little bit. Just depends on the project, on how the designer sets that up. But basically, this is what you're going to see. You got your elevations that run up and down the sides. Down below has your distance out from the center line here. Your elevations here gives your station that this particular cross section's at. Gives you an idea of hey, they're putting in this is that crossover again, so they're putting in their aggregate base, sub base there. They're doing their paving. They got their shoulder. They got some dirt work and so forth here. Here they show what the topsoil excavation is, how much that's being excavated, the earthwork. It has their cut and fills, and this is what they're using to determine how many cubic yards of excavation and fill and so forth, embankment there is on a project. A lot of earth moving contractors, some of your larger contractors, they'll have software that they'll actually go in and plug these numbers in and make sure that the calculation and what's shown on the plans match what they think it's going to be. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. So, that a lot of contractors, especially in this earth moving, they get into a lot more detail when they're actually bidding this thing and have a good idea of where the dirt's at, where it's got to be moved to, and how much there's going to be. Okay. So that that covers the specs and the plans. But quickly then go over site visits and while those are important. And then at that point, we'll get into opening it up to any questions that there may be out there. I've got a link here, and I've picked this item. It's item 2176L72. It's the contract number. That is on that. I go to my procurements, go down to the letting, go to that September letting, go down here to item 2176L72. I click on that. It should come up. Let's be a little slow. Okay. So then it brings up that particular contract, all the information about it down here, who bid on it, how many, what the pay items are, so on and so forth. But it also has the plans and the specifications. And I go to the plans here. They take a minute to load, but basically you're going to see these are very similar to that. And I'm going to probably I want to pick on just one little spot just to kind of give you an idea of why a site visit is important, maybe some of the things to kind of be looking for. Getting a little longer to load than I thought. Okay, so get up here to the top here again. You got your cover sheets, standards, general notes, all on there. And I think your index of sheets. Here's one where the index of sheets is on the cover page. Just like I say, keep in mind there are some variations to that. You have all your pay items, several pages of those, as you can see. Got into your typicals. Here again, some just a different look. It depends a little bit on the designer. See, there are several pages of those. A little quicker here. There's your schedule of quantities for different things. Erosion control, removals, sidewalk, islands, curb and gutter schedule. A lot of different things like that you can have. But as you get into the plans, I'm going to get on down in here. This one here is showing, this is for signals, obviously, cutting in detector loops and stuff like that. You go on down here, you'll find that there are, or here's an intersection, for example. And here's how they've set this up. They've got in the center here, and we'll look at one in particular as we go down the road. But it shows this intersection, gives you an idea of where different things are being done in which quadrant, so forth. There's this island that's here. They have a special detail for that island that's being built. And then they have a detail for every corner of that intersection and what's going to be required there. And you can see these blow up of these details. They give a lot more information. If say you're doing sidewalk and ADA ramps on a project, it's going to show you what the widths of those sidewalks are, what the slopes are, what the elevations are at every corner, where the ADA detectable warning tiles to be placed, so on and so forth. The thing of it is, you do see a lot of detail here, but there's a lot going on. And so the site visit is so important. You know, what might be out there that's changed maybe even from when they did these plans. Things are always changing, and so that's why I say it's important to do a site visit, take a look at it. So I'm going to pick a specific one here. Okay, so this is a sheet out of that set of plans. This happens to be Elm Street. This is in Godfrey, Illinois. It's on Illinois Route 111 and US 67. And it's the intersection. Here again, you kind of see in the center how they've got a small little section of what that intersection looks like. And then where there's work going on, they've blown that up. And you can see in this case, in 3 quadrants, they are planning on doing some improvements. In this one here, they're not planning on any improvements. Here again, you can kind of see this is signalized. Here's a mast arm that's showing right there. You can see the mast arm in the drawing here on the side also. You see there's other little things. This is probably like a handhold for the signals. This here's probably, I'm going to guess, maybe a sign in front of a business. You can kind of see some utilities marked on here. But here again, you don't have a real good feel for exactly, you know, what clearances might be in terms of overhead utilities and that type of thing. So, pulled this up. So we can't actually go out today in the field and take a look at this. I'm going to cheat a little bit. And this is always another way that you can do this. And that's use Google Maps. I don't recommend it. And I'm going to point out exactly why I don't recommend it here in a minute. But here's that intersection, Elm Street. And you can see this is that empty lot off over here. It's like some kind of a children's home over here. So there's obviously a lot of parking. You get a lot of traffic coming out here. Looks like there's some businesses here, maybe a business in this corner here. But what you can do, and what I'll do today, I'm going to take this little guy and we'll just drop him in here. We can get a street view. Okay, so there's that corner. No work was intended. That's that empty lot. There's the business over here. You can see the overhead power lines. Looks like you got lines that actually run underneath the mast arm. So, you know, it could be a little bit of a clearance area. You got power lines up above there. You know, you can kind of scroll in here a little bit. You can see there's one of the handholds for the utilities or for the signals. There's that sign that I mentioned. You know, I'm sure the owner of this business, they don't want their sign messed up. So these are things that you got to work around. You know that if you got a mast arm here and signal handhold over here, there's going to be conduits and wires that's running underneath here. So that's going to be something that you're going to have to work around. You're facing this area here, but still, you know, there's wires and stuff somewhere underneath there, but they're probably deep enough, but you want to make sure they're located, and then you want to make sure that you watch out for it when you're actually doing work there. Look across here, it's easy to kind of scroll over. Yeah, you can see here's another business there. Doesn't appear to be too many utilities, although if I look down here, you can see there's I'm going to guess that's probably AT&T, might be fiber optics. It's probably running along this side of the road, so that's something that you need to be aware of, that you may have to contend with. And here's the ramp that you're going to be doing work on. There's a handhold nearby, mast arm. So it's always good, go out, take a look at this, see what you might be dealing with. Here in this corner, this is Lewis Clark Community College. They got some nice shrubbery and things out there. You're going to be doing work in this area in front of their sign. I'm sure they don't want that damaged. Just things that you need to be aware of that you may have to contend with. The push buttons for the signals are on the mast arm. They may be getting changed with this project. I didn't look at that closely, but something to keep in mind. One thing that I did kind of notice here is they didn't show any improvements here. And I guess as I'm thinking about that, kind of brings up there's a curb cut here for something, but it doesn't appear there's anything there. Normally, if they have a handicap ramp and they got a crosswalk here, coming across this here, they have to build something here. If it's just a landing, whether it goes anywhere or not, but just a landing to where a handicapped person can get off the roadway and in safety. So, you know, here, that might be something that gets added to this project. I don't know. But if it does, you can see there's a lot more stuff here that you might have to contend with if that work happens there. So that's kind of what I'm trying to point out. It's very important. I'm not going this whole project length, but I'm sure if we go down the street here, you can see, there's going to be, here's another intersection, same kinds of things. You can see here, there's obviously some kind of underground utility here that you may have to contend with, and that one's very close to where you're at. If it's fiber optics, you definitely do not want to damage that. That can be very costly. But here again, you can see what anything overhead or not. You can see if there's any access issues that you may have to deal with. If there's commitments, maybe there's a commitment to somebody that has this access that you got to keep that open at all times, for example. But those are the kinds of things that I would be looking for if I'm out there, just making sure that I'm not, going to have something that, maybe some property owners put some special plantings or stuff out there. Well, you're not going to want to go in there and dig up their shrub or even their flowers and not coordinate with them when you do the work. So it's always good to look at that. And then I said I would talk about, the view. I'm going to go back up here to where I was at because I believe that one really points out what I'm saying. So if you look down here in the right-hand corner, it says image captured November 2021. Okay, well, that's almost a year ago now. So you don't know what may have changed from when this image was taken. That's why I say sometimes this isn't good. You may see these be like 2018, 2019. So it could go a long ways back. And I think maybe, let me see if I go out. Imagery here was actually in 2022. I don't see the actual date. So they've actually flown this within the last year. But just keep in mind, especially when you go into, the street view. I think I'll just pick one of these back here. Here's a good example. The capture of that was June 2013. So just keep in mind when you're looking at Google, if you're trying to do it that way rather than actually making a field trip, you may be looking at information that is extremely old, and I'd almost bet things have probably changed in some shape or manner. Okay. That's what I've got on the site visit at this time. Before I go into Q&A, just want to remind you again, visit Eventbrite. Like I say, pin that on your browser, check in on that from time to time, see what's coming up, and get signed up for them. If you haven't signed up for some of those that are already out there, look at them. There's a little more information on the website about them. Decide if that's something that you would like to do. And so with that, I'm going to go to the Q&A, and I'm going to stop the sharing for a second. I'm going to check the chats, but if anybody's got a question, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and ask that question. Well, I've tried to cover quite a little bit, but like I say, it's just trying to give you an overview of what's out there, what might be important to you, where you can find some of that stuff, and then for future workshops, we'll go into a lot more of this stuff in more detail. See any questions in the chat yet, but if anybody got a question about anything I covered, feel free to unmute yourself, speak up. We can go back to that slide, take a more closer look at it if you like, whatever we need to do. We'll note too for you, Dave Carter, who's with IDOT, he's recording this session. He's also put out in a chat at the end of the workshop, we'd like for you to take a minute, fill out our 3-question survey. And because we really want to know what you're thinking and how we can improve these in the future. There's a link right there for that. So you can go to that real quickly, fill that out for us. We'd really appreciate it. We sincerely want to hear what your comments are and do anything we can to improve as we go forward with this. Still not seeing any questions yet. I'm gonna go back into sharing here real quick. So you should be able to say the Q&A. While you're thinking of any questions, I'm gonna go to the next slide that I have here. ESI Consultants is your technical supportive services consultant. All of these services that we provide are free. You gotta contact us and let us know what you need. It's hard for us to read minds, so reach out to us at any time. As I mentioned before, my name is David Clark. I got my email address there, office phone number. I'll tell you, probably the easiest way to find me is my cell number because we're all over the place. People up in districts, and we do districts 1 through 9, so we cover the entire state. So it doesn't matter if you're in Cairo, you're in Chicago, you're in Quincy, you're in Danville. It doesn't matter where you're at in the state of Illinois. We have somebody that can help you. Staff that I have up in the District 1, 2, 3 area, Vinu Patel. I don't know if anybody's been working with Vinu or not, but he's there. There's his email address and a phone number that you can reach him. Kevin Hayes is another person out in our Naperville office. Brent Zintner has a ton of construction experience. He's out there. Tina Ballin. Tina is, she's more probably on the consultant side. She works a lot with us as a consultant, entering stuff into the ePass system for consulting, working on our pre-qualifications and things like that. So, she's a real good resource for any help on the ePass and qualifications with IDOT. And probably the best thing to do, contact me first. I'll figure out who might be the best person to help you with the question that you have, and then I'll have them reach out to you. We also have some sub-consultants that work with us, I guess, really. Up in District 1 through 3, we have Oneida Engineering Solutions. Don Miller's kind of their lead, but Laura Finley and Don Matheson also are available to help. Here again, contact me, I'll get a hold of Don. He'll figure out which one of the 3 of them is maybe the best person to help with your particular issue. Down in Districts 4 through 6, Herman and Associates. Alicia Herman's kind of the lead there. She does have some other people too that work with her. But again, contact me, I'll get a hold of Alicia, and then she'll have herself or one of them reach out to you. Down in the southern part of the state, District 7 through 9, we have EFK Moen. John Scheibel and Jeff Church are the 2 people there. John kind of coordinates most of that. I usually send things to John, and then he decides who might be best to help with your issue there. Any of you that's been around IDOT probably maybe know John Scheibel and Jeff Church from that area. They both worked for IDOT for 30 some years. So a huge amount of experience there in working with IDOT and what's important and how to bid and construction issues, getting pre-qualified, so on and so forth. So that kind of covers that. Like I say, this is being recorded, so IDOT will be posting that. You'll get notification of that. You'll be able to go out and look and listen to this at any time. Evaluations, so I'll just hit on that one more time. Be sure to fill out that evaluation. Like I say, it's 3 questions. It won't take you very long. So just take time to do that. We really appreciate your input. And I'm just going to go back here and check. I'm not seeing any additional questions. So I'll give you one more shout out. Anybody got a question? Go ahead and unmute, ask it. Otherwise, we'll call it a day. All right, everybody, not seeing anybody with any questions. Appreciate your time and joining us today. Sign up for the one this afternoon and hope to see you again then next week. Thank you very much for your attention. And again, appreciate getting the evaluation of what you thought the workshop was like today. Thank you very much.